it's great. Everything built up. They sort of got away from this sort of build of bad situations leading into worse as the series went on, and it sort of became okay situation goes to okay situation goes to bad situation goes to okay situation. Where here, just things got worse and worse and worse. I really like that in Backseat Drivers, how it started to do the same thing there, where the situation just got worse and worse and worse as we went on. You can see in this episode we also used a lot of color cards as backgrounds, and I argued against this. These color cards really add nothing. They look rather cheap, and usually are roundly criticized by anybody in the animation field. And yet here we were doing it in these shows, and I had to try and get them out as much as possible. They just look very bland, especially when you just color them with a sort of an olive pea green background like you see here. It's just a horrible choice. Well, this ending. Originally, this ending, I think, just ended there. Nobody saw that, right? And that was it. And between Jonah and myself, we had to rewrite this and come up with all these ideas of what goes on, to sort of give a comeuppance or a negative ending. Walk of Doom. Really a nicely written episode, I think. But one of the most poorly executed and really caused us a lot of problems. Ron Brewer and Kyle Menke boarded on it. Ron Brewer was a board artist from Thornberrys and Family Guy I used to work with. And he didn't draw the characters very well. But I believe that the overseas layout artists would compensate for that and put it on model, which on this show they didn't. Many of the previous episodes they did. Suddenly it comes to this episode, and they didn't correct the drawings on the boards to match the model sheets. Very upset, and Jonan took it as a sign that nothing was working out. But the funny thing is that despite the drawings in this episode, a lot of people are pretty endeared to this. Another episode like that was The Wetning. Badly drawn overseas, but ended up being very fun episodes, and people liked them a lot. But they were both well-written episodes. At the core, they were fun ideas, and the transgression of events was plausible and fun and, well executed, I think. It was really nice to see the progression of these episodes. If you watch the first 6 episodes, you sort of get introduced to all the characters in the world. It's really, really nice. So, you had Zim with the parents at school. You had, Zim setting up his house. You had Zim dealing with somebody trying to be his friend. How Zim deals with emotional attachments. And you come onto this episode, and you have Zim dealing with the world, where he's going out. He's not at the school, but he's dealing with Gur. You sort of understand how Gur works, and they're going out into the world and dealing with the world. And you're seeing them lose their minds. This was, I think, one of the original ideas, too, when the show was pitched to Nickelodeon of what Zim would be about. And the premise was in the pitch pack. So here it is being executed. You can see a bunch of cameos of people. Roman Dirge shows up walking around here, and Brent, our supervisor, our design coordinator is what he was. A show like this is very difficult to do anyway. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of situations, tons of backgrounds. It stressed out our entire design crew. The scary chihuahua that shows up there, as I had said in another commentary, that it never really comes to fruition. That's the first shot I think you ever see of the scary chihuahua. Or did we see in the first episode? I can't remember, but it always would just show up. It was just a small little side in-joke thing. Just a chihuahua that would scare Zim. Really didn't have any purpose or meaning. Never was developed. Actually got forgotten out of the series later on. Jonan came up with the idea to put in all these animal squeals and gunshots and everything in the background. I remember being very afraid that New York would hold this episode up, saying that we should get rid of all the gunshots. Especially since this was only made about a year after, I think, the Columbine shooting had occurred. And we got a lot of crap, I think, before I ever came onto the show about Dib looking like a Columbine student, one of those trenchcoat mafia kids. He had a black trench coat, and I think they wanted to change it out. Luckily, we never had to change the design of Dib. Same thing happened. We were on the God, the Devil, and Bob Columbine happened, and the devil was dressed in a black trench coat. Everybody wanted to change the design just because they thought it was reminiscent of Columbine. Really horrible choice, because it's so funny that these people in animation are paid hundreds of thousands to head up these studios don't realize that it takes 9 months to do an animated show. And by the time it's on TV, which is probably more than 9 months in the future, maybe as much as a year, nobody's going to remember what the hell Columbine was. I mean, yeah, they'll remember it, but they're not going to say, hey, that's like Columbine. And, come on, Dib isn't like a Columbine student. He doesn't have guns. And a lot of people wear black trench coats. For God's sakes, I wore a black trench coat while on this series. Actually, I wore a black trench coat before the series, and I'm going to wear one afterwards. There's Brent Crow standing on the corner. These bus scenes were really fun. Really well written, really crafty stuff. You can see that there was a TNT under the seat, the driver's seat. I think the background artist, Spencer Davis, he drew that in sort of as his own joke. Sort of a nod to Speed, the movie with Keanu Reeves. A lot of this dialogue that you hear in this episode is quoted by people a lot. Fans of Zim. They love this dialogue. And it was great dialogue. Back then, the dialogue was really nice. Oof, some of the worst animated scenes in this show. Again, one of the most gruesome scenes coming up. Always seemed to be a real gross out gruesome scene in almost every episode in this first season. The eyes burning up and bubbling. Really grotesque. Oh, absolutely disgusting. I'm surprised we didn't hear more complaints. We were waiting for far more complaints from fans or parents of fans, and never heard a lot of complaints. We never got mail with horrible complaints. One girl finally wrote, I forget if she wrote Jonan or if Jonan got a hold of the letter, but there was a fan message from some girl saying that, I forget what it is, the Amanda Show is just unacceptably bad, and Zim is not good because it's filled with sad things. And Jonan highlighted that message and hung it up on his door. He blew up the message, or the letter, 3 times its size. He was rather proud of that. Jonan originally would always say that if he could make kids cry, he would. I think he did. Or we showed one of these episodes. Well, we show all these episodes to kids before they ever aired. We'd have people doing tours throughout the building here at Nickelodeon. And when they came to Zim, we'd show them an episode and try to gauge kids' reactions. And kids were fascinated by the show. Either fascinated or they didn't want anything to do with it. They wouldn't look at it. But we showed a group of young kids Dark Harvest, and they just lost their minds. At the point where Dib finally gets captured by Zim, it looked like the kids were going to cry. And just previous to that, one little girl had just had enough, I think, when the kids were starting to get their organs plucked and Dib started running around in fear. Girl got up, ran towards me thinking I was her mom, saw that I wasn't her mom, and then ran across the room crying. And, last I saw, she was being escorted out the door. With their head buried in her mom's torso, sobbing uncontrollably. Never saw that girl again, but I heard from people that saw these kids walking around later on in the day that they were all trying to test how brave each other were when they were watching that. They kept asking, were you afraid? Were you afraid when you saw that? I wasn't afraid. So it was fun to see these reactions. Unfortunately, I think that sort of reaction actually turned off more people to us than was good for us. And I'm sure parents didn't like to see their kids so bugged out over a simple cartoon.